Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Hope for the Soul podcast. We're glad that you have tuned in today whenever you are listening. We are absent our resident joke teller, Kayla, so you're getting me right out of the gate.
Fabulous Kayla is not with us today.
She is.
Kayla hath forsaken us.
She's forsaken us because she's doing probably more important things over in the other office. But we're glad that you joined us today, and I think we're going to have a good episode today. Me and you have been texting back and forth. I saw a video clip, a YouTube short, last week, and I actually texted to a couple friends. And then Monday of this week, you texted me the same clip. Or was it yesterday? One day this week, you texted me the same clip, and we've been talking about that. So let's dive in and I guess give some context of what started our conversation and then why we're here today. Go ahead, Dad.
Well, we have a studio audience today.
We have people in the room.
And so, as a matter of fact, we have our largest studio audience ever.
You know,
And so we're moving in the right direction.
we're 2 or 3 agree.
As a matter of fact, our largest studio audience in the past has been one.
Yeah, we got
We
2.
have grown by 100%, and we have 2 watching us today.
Won't he do it?
So he did it again.
All right, that's so dumb. It would be a lot better with a Kayla joke, I think.
So I think this popped up. It might have been Fox or social media or something, but I saw a clip, and the discussion was taking place of integrity. Of course, you know, when it's ever talking about character, integrity,
Yeah.
that those are the things that grabbed my mind, and especially with an upcoming book, I'm looking for all different type of modern issues to talk about. One of those, as we just talked about here,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll mention that these co-joined twins that just got married. There's a lot to be parsed in such a moment. You know, one girl's married to the guy, but if they have a child, you know, who bears the child, and just a whole lot of different issues that rise up on what is correct here.
Yeah, it's very nuanced.
I personally think that there's probably a movie deal in the making on the whole thing, and somebody's going to make some money. But beyond that, how do you deal with such issues? And then I came across this thing this week, and when I started looking at it, the first words I heard was, "What is your price? What is your price?" It caught my attention, and then the discussion went on, and then the conclusion of this short discussion was that there are certain things in life that if you have a price, you're for sale. And then that was kicked around, and then the concept was thrown out that if your price to sell out, if your price is anything less than your life, then you can be bought.
Yeah, you can compromise. So the backstory to those that haven't seen the video, there's an investigative reporter who's sat down and kind of like a round table discussion with a guy named Eric Metaxas. He's a television host on TVN, but also he's an author, writes a lot of incredible stuff. He's truly a scholar mind, and he's just he's brilliant. Well, he has a round table that he calls Socrates in the City, and he hosted this investigative journalist who has uncovered some incredible things the past 10 or 12 years in American culture, whether that be politics or entertainment, finance. He's uncovered
The church.
Yeah. He's uncovered some incredibly dark things.
He's an equal opportunity investigator.
Yes, and death threats. The government's come after him. Big businesses come after him. Everyone has come after him. And in this conversation, Mr. Metaxas asked him, "What is your cost? Why do you do this?" And he replies, "My life is my cost. I'm committed to the truth. No matter, I cannot be bought and paid for. The only way I'm bought and paid for, the only way, this is my mission in life," is what he was saying. "And the only way I stop this is for me to lose my life. And that we can relate to that because we operate under calling. That's a reporter who is operating under not just a career, but he's found a purpose that's much greater than career and finance. He said, I'm doing this no matter what. And this is how we operate but also at the end of the day, every Christian, every believer should probably kneel down. How are you going to follow Jesus? How are you going to be faithful to the things of God, to the local church?
So
What's your cost? What's your buy-in? What's your buyout?
I like to look at these things with something maybe from a secular context. And uh, the calling that we face is very similar to, say, the calling of a police officer.
Right.
Because a police officer will work for a small salary. I mean, I doubt there's police officer salaries just out on the street that's more than $70,000, $80,000, and probably less when they start. Probably more like 40 to 50 when they first start. Is But then, so why do they spend their time in preparation and then put their self on the line every day? Yeah. Because you never know when there's going to be a call out. Well, it's like this thing that happened in California this week. There was this girl that was dressed in tactical, and she had come and she was cooperating with the police, and she was running towards the police. Another officer that wasn't involved in what was going on, he saw her running towards police. He
thought she was a threat.
And he shot her.
Wow.
And so you have these moments when you have these officers who operate with a calling. And as a result, their salaries are low, their hours are hard, their stress levels are unbelievable. Their divorce rate
and suicide rates are extremely high in law enforcement.
But they do it because of there is this calling, and that's the only way you can explain it. And likewise, it's the very same if you're in ministry. You go somewhere and work for a lifetime because you're called. I mean, you give a called minister, he receives a call to go to a city. He can go to that city. If he's got a Bible, a burden, and a call, that's all it takes. And he'll go without money. He'll go and find a job, and he'll support his calling before he supports himself. And the only way you explain that is the calling that is, and the mission that is on them. So when I think of this, along with police officers, you always, whenever you think of police officers, there's always another subject that comes up, because we had to go to the police a while back, and there was in our city at that point, there was 124 police officers in our city, and we didn't know that till we were sitting there, and the discussion was happening that one bad police officer makes the other 123 look bad. Because if one guy is on the take, or one guy is what we might call dirty, then the whole force looks bad. So, and we've often heard that there are these police officers that they become dirty or compromised in some way. So if you become compromised in some way as a police officer, you've taken money, you've looked the other way, you've participated, you might be blackmailed, you may have a secret of your own. All of that thing. But I've seen this in ministry too. I've seen ministers who have at some point had a behavioral change, and they've had something in their life that they have compromised on. And when they've compromised on, they lose their moral authority. When you lose the moral authority, they can no longer say what thus saith the word of the Lord, or they can't tell you this is what's right and this is what we have to do, because they have sullied themselves. Whatever it was.
That's a good word, by the way.
Sullied?
Sullied.
Yeah, it's good. I don't even know if it's a King James word.
That's Southeast Texas.
It's a East Texas word. But when you think about these people who have crossed certain lines, and they go into the unspoken zones, the danger zones, and there is, between two people, there's always lines that you can't cross. And as a leader, if you cross certain lines, you've compromised not only yourself and that person, but you've compromised a ministry, you've compromised your family, you've compromised another person's family, and in the event that there might be, say, the quote, the other woman, you have destroyed your family, you have destroyed her family, and then also there's fallout everywhere. So when you look at this concept of being able to pay with your life, that's something that is incredibly noble. When when your price is your life, you'll die for this thing.
And I think that goes beyond, Dad, what we do as preachers. This goes to the very heart of what it means to be a Christian. Because the Bible tells us to pick up our cross and follow Jesus. I think it was Paul that said, this is your reasonable service. So whenever we enter into the realm of being a Christian, whenever we lay down our life and pick up God's plan for our life, it doesn't matter if you're a preacher, if you're in law enforcement. It doesn't matter if you're a stay-at-home mom. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you work a 9 to 5 and work in a cubicle, and your desire in life is just to make a good living for your family and fund your retirement and have fun with the kids on the weekend. Whenever we become a Christian, the calling is greater. The purpose for our life is greater because we now serve and operate in a different kingdom. We now operate in a different economy that says to lose my life is to gain a much better life. And I think that's the importance of us knowing our value and our identity as Christians, is that my value is not wrapped up in if I make 75,000 a year or 250 or 300,000 or 400,000 a year, whatever it is. And we have all that range in our church. Regardless of if you're below the poverty line or above the poverty line, if you're beautiful or if you have if you view yourself as being unattractive, if you have high confidence or no confidence, all that has to fade away at the cross, because now we're living in a different kingdom and God's purpose becomes my purpose. And so my price is not what I make. It's not who I am. It's not what I want to do with my life or my family. My price becomes, what does God want to do in my life and through my life?
Absolutely. And there is an expectation, there is a responsibility that is on every one of us, that we live and we go through our lives with certain levels of behavior. And that's what an ethic is. An ethic is basically a rule of conduct that's acceptable and expected by society. Ethics are kind of come from the outside. And so I have an ethical responsibility. However, an integrity is not outside in. And integrity is something deep within you that just, it should be stronger and more powerful and more overriding in you than even your ethic is. I mean, your integrity should trump your ethic every day. I mean, if you've got a strong integrity, you don't even need ethics because your integrity is more powerful.
Yeah,
And so
yeah. There's a difference between morality and ethics. A lot of times we view these things as the same. I talked about this a couple months ago, I think, on a Sunday morning. I forgot about that until just now. Morality is what we base our ethics on. So, in other words, if I'm, for instance, a police officer has a code of conduct, there's a list of ethics that he agrees to. We have doctors and lawyers in our church. There's a code of conduct that they agree to. Okay, they sign. A police officer, if I pass anyone in distress, whether I'm on duty or off duty, I'm going to stop. A doctor, the same thing. If I see someone in a medical emergency, I'm going to get involved in this. That's the ethic. But the morality says, I'm not doing this because I'm a doctor. I'm doing this because I value life. I value this. And so I'm sorry to interrupt there, but
no, you're doing this because it's right.
Yes.
It's what's right.
Yeah.
And so when I begin to consider what is my price, and this prompted some good thought in me. Am I willing to die for the cause?
That's good.
What would happen, I wonder, if, we always, many times we refer to what might happen in the future with, say, the mark of the beast. That's a mountain worth dying on. I mean, what am I going to do in that moment? But what are you going to do, my friend, when you are caught in the middle of an ethical crisis, when you're caught in the middle of a dilemma? And what's the decision you're going to make? Is it the decision that is going to be politically correct, or what's right in the sight of God. And so, with this in mind, uh, three three characters in the scripture jumped into my mind, and I want to throw them at you. First off is Judas. I mean, everybody knows that everybody's got a Judas in your life, and everybody there's
We've
every
all been
one of
betrayed.
us that you just know long before Judas sold Jesus out, long before he betrayed him, long before that fateful kiss, his inclinations were already stepping over the line in the wrong direction. And all of us have these people in our world. We all know these people whom even though they still they're able to still be in the presence of Jesus. They're still stepping over lines, and they're still pressing limits the other direction. This is we all have these people, and we know these. And you say, what would be the price that you could buy somebody? Well, Judas' case, it was 30 pieces of silver, but I believe probably could even been much less.
Oh.
That was the price offered. He didn't set the price, but the bottom line is whatever their price was, he was going to pay it for his own internal problems, for his own internal reasons, for whatever reason he was choosing to be disloyal, whatever reason he was choosing to betray. His price was pretty low.
I think if you get to the real issue, his price, the issue's never the issue, right? If somebody comes to you and they're mad about something, what they're saying they're mad about, just let them talk, and before long,
You'll get to it.
You'll get to the real issue. Okay, Judas didn't sell Jesus out for 30 pieces of silver. I think it was only 30 pieces of silver because he valued himself so little that anybody that would give him attention. So his real issue was affirmation. His real issue was a lack of self-confidence.
We've gone into psychology now.
His real issue was not money. His issue was how he viewed himself. And this is what I think we talked about this last week as well. This goes back to his issue never changed because he ended his life because he thought so little of himself because of his mistake. Had he given the guilt and the shame to Jesus, had he found his identity before he denied Jesus, betrayed Jesus, if he had found his identity in being a son of God, a disciple of the living Christ, the outcome would have been much differently. The issue is never the issue. Judas's price was not 30 pieces of silver. It was a low self-worth.
So, and then what you're saying, because of that, it could have been any monetary price. It could have been low or high. He was going to sell out anyway.
He wasn't selling to the highest bidder. I think he was selling out to the first bidder.
The easy way.
The easy way.
So when you think about the fact that all of us have a Judas in our lives, and we may be the Judas in somebody else's life, and if we are,
we've all made that mistake.
We really need to do some.
That's right.
Some self-evaluation and probably with some repenting. The second person I want to talk about is Esau, because Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. Now, to me, when I think of this particular story, I like to say that Esau gave everything for a can of chicken noodle soup, but that's not much of a price. But what he did was he stepped over all of the laws of the patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
He stepped over all of the cultural expectations of his moment, and he was willing to put the most sacred thing that his family or his father could give him, which was the birthright. He was willing to put it all on the line for a bowl of soup. Or when you think about the bowl of soup, then you have to consider what does soup do? Well, you eat it. So you eat soup to take care of physical needs. So and so when you eat soup, you get full. You're not hungry anymore, and so you've been satisfied. You've been gratified, and you've met this need. So when you look at Esau, who was willing to sell this most precious thing for a temporary gratification of his flesh, you see his price was pretty low.
Judas, his price was affirmation. Esau's price was self gratification. It was, I want the stuff. I don't want my I don't want my brother.
Let me cool you down. Give us a hanky. Let's cool him down today.
I don't want anything else but what I want other people to view me as superior. I want the blessing, I want the money, I want the estate, I want dad's fancy camel, I want dad's I want I want the nice tent, I want all the servants. When I roll into town, I want people to say, "Oh, look at Esau. Look at him.
But he sold it.
Look at." But while getting it, he lost it all. Wow.
He compromised himself. He sold his birthright for temporary gratification, and that lets me know. Now take this into look at the political realm today, and you ever wondered why that a politician will be a great person, make wonderful promises, and their track record and their character, their family, their history, you see just nothing but an impeccable. This could be the second coming. This could be a Messiah figure for us. And then as soon as they get in office, it seems like they make decisions that are completely different. And so you have to probably discover that at some point, to get there and to create that image they had to probably agree, make some backroom agreements that they would do certain things behind the scenes. And so the person that we got is not the person that we had.
Yeah.
And so that happens time again. So that lets me know that it's so very easy, because I want something now. I'm willing to gratify my flesh now. So that's the second person that had come to mind, and I really appreciate your foray into sociology and psychology here today. I need you to write this down, because I've got a chapter coming up, and this will help me a lot. You just be the ghost
Affirmation,
author.
self-gratification.
Come on now.
I've got 2 home runs. The next one's probably going to strike out.
The third one that comes to mind now is Naboth. Naboth's dilemma was much like Esau's. It was the birthright. It was the family farm. It was the beautiful vineyard. And so the king says, I want what you have, and I'm willing to give you something better. And the story says better than it is. In other words, he said, I'll give you something better than what you have for this. Well, first off, that's just like the devil. He'll tell you he's going to give you something better than what you had. And so he'll give you'll enter this temptation, you'll sign a contract with the devil, and then you discover that I really wish I had my peace back. I wish I had my joy back. I wish I had the presence of God back in my life. And so Naboth refused to sell all of that heritage, the thing his family had given to him, the thing that was so sacred. He refused to pay this. And so eventually his life was taken. And to him, he valued those things so strongly that he's willing to die for it. And so this brings me to the question is, what am I willing to die for?
So good.
And as a leader, what price am I willing to pay? And now, where I'm at in life, you can probably look at me and someone that's I think I'm 30 years old, maybe 31 years old, somewhere in there, maybe a little past it. And but now there's a track record that's there. So not only do you have when I first came to Conroe 30 something years ago, I didn't have a track record, and so I didn't know exactly what to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. But you add 30 something years to this now, way down the road, and now there's a track record of who and what. There's a track record of responses. There's a track record of behavior. And I like to use the term, there's a track record of integrity. It's a track record of ethical decisions, because they're there in all of us. But the longer you live, the more of a pathway. And so when you're looking at someone now and you have a case study that has the real historical content of their individual character, and then you see time after time after time, or once every 5 years, or you see there's not only is there the track record of all the decisions, but you also see the stumble points. And it's easy to see people that have sold out, that have sold short of their life. They had a price on them.
Paul said, I'm willing to spend and be spent. It's easy to spend. It's hard to be spent. In other words, when I get to the end of my road, when I think I've given all I can give, there's still more for me to give. And it comes not from my resources, not from my relationships, not from a draw against your 401k to make something happen in your life or your ministry, not from anything. When all that runs out, Paul said, I'm willing to spend, I'm willing to do all that. But I'm willing to be spent. Wrote that as he was in a prison cell.
So
on your behalf, I'm willing to do this.
So we have two currencies.
Yeah.
We have the stuff that we have, and then we have ourselves. And the stuff that we have tends to run out pretty quick.
Yeah.
And so when you're out of your stuff, and now you're still faced with a crisis, or you're still in the moment of trying to navigate through, then that's when we say things. Well, let's see what the boy's made of now.
It's an issue of stewardship, because Paul said, I'm willing to spend. In other words, I have possessions. I possess resources. I possess money. I possess giftings. I possess calling. I possess all of this. Okay, I have this under my control. Okay, but there's a lot of people today. This is why this is an issue of stewardship, because we have all the things, but really we don't have it. They have us, because we're not willing to spend it. We're not willing to let it all go. Our price is our possession, rather than being spent, our life. And this is we can go all day on
when
this.
You begin to invest the currency of you.
Yeah.
When you put we use them, we put it all on the line. We put ourselves on the line. When you arrive at that place, people can see, as long as you were spending your stuff and your resources, it looked one way. But when you begin to spend the currency of yourself, and there's some people who never learn to spend themselves. And the longer they put off spending themselves, the more expensive it's going to be in the long run.
And it really shows you, it doesn't matter, it could be a rich person or a poor a person. If that's where it stops, they're really showing you how poor they are. They can be a multimillionaire on paper. They can have ideas, they can have all this. But if they're not willing to lay all that on the line, they're showing you how cheap they really are. You got to dig deep. You got to dig deep.
So Paul says,
I wish I had a room full of 20-year-old and 25-year-old young preachers to talk to
Paul
right
said
now.
that we should present ourselves a living sacrifice.
A living sacrifice.
It's holy and acceptable.
Pleasing.
But then he adds on this attachment, this clause, that it's only reasonable.
It's reasonable
to be a living sacrifice.
It's not unreasonable.
So a living sacrifice is, say this table is the altar. And you have to, if you're a living sacrifice, nobody can put yourself on this altar but you. And when you get yourself on, I've got a message that I preached a while back, but I'm going to bring it back pretty soon for a special thing. When you put yourself on the altar, it's not easy to stay there, because when you're on that altar, you realize something's got to die. And stuff that's alive doesn't want to die. And when stuff that doesn't want to die realize that death is an option, it goes to fighting. It goes to resisting. Your flesh resists being placed on an altar. That's the reason you can fast all morning long, and you're miserable, because your flesh doesn't like this. You can go a day or two, really not even eat when it's on your agenda. But let this be a God agenda, a God day, and it's a terrible time, because placing yourself on the altar is difficult. So you have to become a living sacrifice. You have to be willing to say, okay, I am not doing this. I'm not crossing this line. This is how we're going to live. This is what it's right, and we're not going in that direction.
I think there's a step that we can look at in the Old Testament. There's one step past putting yourself on the altar. And it's Abraham when he put his future on the altar. It's not enough. Let me just preach a little bit here, all right? It's not enough that we lay ourselves on the altar as believers. Yes, that's good. Yes, we should do that. But what's Trent and Kayla doing with our 3 kids? Are we teaching them that the altar comes first? When Abraham laid that promise boy on the altar, he said, this is my identity. My wife doesn't know I'm doing this. My servants I left at the base of the mountain, they don't know I'm doing this. This is something between me and God. This isn't even between me and my boy that I'm laying on the altar. My life is so important that the most precious thing to me, in that day and age, it was heritage and legacy, and it's still that today. He said, I'm willing to lay the future. I'm willing to lay God's promises for me on the altar.
If you read that story, it talks that Abraham built a fire, he placed a light on the fire, and then he bound him. He had to be tied to stay on that altar. And there comes a point you've got to be willing. If I'm going to be a living sacrifice, I'm going to please God, I've got to crawl myself up onto an altar, and I've got to use the currency of me.
Unless a seed falls in the ground and dies.
That's a book. Now here's the deal. If you see someone that's willing to crawl on that altar and stay there, let's see what comes out of it.
So good.
Let's see absolutely what comes out of that moment. And then when I see the flip side, okay, when you see tremendous blessings that are based in purity, that only God could have done for someone, then you know that this is the result of spending all of themselves. Now, we've talked about this, we've hinted at this thing in the past, but there are some pastors, when I see their blessings, I look at what they have, and my carnal flesh wants to say, I wonder what they sold out or compromised to do this. But my spirit man has to recognize, I don't want to pay that huge blessing.
That cost them something.
There was a big price tag on that.
For God to trust them with that is a big private sacrifice that nobody will ever know.
I saw someone get this huge blessing in their life years ago, and I said, tell me, because I don't want to pay this price, but I would be interested. Just tell me your story. What did it cost you? And that was a tearful, painful conversation, and I don't want that. You know the song that you don't know the cost of the oil in my alabaster box, when that lady crushed that oil? You don't really know what that represented because of her lifestyle. To have the money for that, there was a lot of questionable, uncomfortable behavior in her life. There was a lot of shame in there. There was a lot of guilt. There was a lot of family controversy. She had disappointed a lot of people. She had attained this. So when she crushes it. And that song just comes alive. We don't really know what that costs. And that's the reason God says she's anointed me for my burial. And it's a sweet savor. And when you realize that when your sacrifice is laid on the altar, and you've put yourself there, and you've suddenly spent yourself out, and you have nothing. When the seed falls in the ground, when it dies, here is the deal with the seed falling in the ground. Because I've been in this place. I've been where, first off, when the seed is dropped in the ground, it spins and spins. And I've lived in that tumble for too many times. And then I've been landing on the ground, and I've been covered up and forgotten. It's dark. It's lonely. And then that seed has to sort of die because it gets all black and slimy and ugly. It dies. But this scripture says, unless the seed, it's not a matter of if the seed.
It's going to.
You have a choice. It's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, you're going to miss out on the miraculous. Unless the seed falls and dies, it abides alone. So it's got to die. We have to totally empty ourselves to walk in the perfect miraculous of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so good.
But if it doesn't die, see, I've been in seasons of life when, and that I feel like I'm going to die. How many times have you said that, or you've heard somebody say, this is precious so bad, I feel like it's going to kill me. This thing's going to kill me. I'm not going to make it through this. Okay. Unless the seed fall and die, it's going to be one seed in a seed jar in the barn. But if it dies, if it's expended, if it's used up, in that moment of death comes beautiful life, because it's unless it dies. But if it dies, it goes on to say, it shall bring forth much fruit like him. So it leaves me with this word picture that, Trent, if you spend your life and you're willing to put all on the line, and you're willing to go to the edge, and you're willing to die in the process, and die to you, die to safety zones, die to comfort, die to all those things that means so much to us. But if you'll do that, let yourself fall on the ground and die, and actually die, not when you feel like you're dying, but actually let it all go and you die. When that happens, it says it brings forth much fruit like him. So what happens is, if this one seed dies and brings forth fruit, it's going to be fruit of what died. So if you are willing to die in this season,
exponential growth.
What's going to happen in next season? Instead of one seed, you're going to have half a dozen seeds left over. And so the next season, when you get there, there's 6 opportunities. So you don't have to die by yourself next time, because every harvest demands a death.
So good.
It requires it. You can't avoid it. And if you're leading people in any way, your dream has to die. You've got to be willing to put it all on the line. You can't sell out. If you had a price that kept you in your own comfort zone, then Jonah had a choice. He could go to Nineveh and have a move of God, or he could go to Tarshish and have an easier pathway. If we choose the easier pathway, it may be a lower price now, but it's a higher price in the long run. And I've heard people use this term. You play now. I mean, you pay now.
Play later.
If you play now, you'll pay later. But if you'll pay now, you can play later. And if you're willing to put it all on the line, use yourself, spend yourself, what will happen is the next harvest, there'll be more. And then a lifetime of harvest when it's time to die again.
That's good.
It won't be just one seed. This time it'll be a whole shelf full of seeds that have been saved from last year's harvest.
Yeah.
They're going to go on this journey with you. And instead of it just being 10 harvests down the road, there's going to be an exponential number of seeds that are going to grow. And when they die, what they produce exponentially. And that's why we do what we do.
And that's why Abraham is known as the father of a great nation, because he was willing to put that seed of his future in the ground. He was willing to let it die. Thanks, everybody, for listening today. Do you have anything else?
Well, I just wanted to mention one more time Naboth. On the line.
Put it all.
He put it all.
It's so good.
And you got to be willing to die for the dream.
That's really good.
God bless you now.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week right here on Hope for the Soul.